I'm just texting. Just give me 1 second. I'm texting real quick. I'm texting Michelle, actually. We have a lot of inside jokes in the office. You know what? I stopped texting a while ago. I've been actually texting a lot more the last couple of weeks because I stopped texting because I hate predictive texting. Has anyone ever said anything stupid with predictive texting? My best friend and I, we were trying to set some plans, and he had all this stuff to do with his wife and kids, and I was texting him you better check in with your wife, and I put in wife and hit send, and by the time it got to him, it was you better check with your wide, and I was like, oh no. So I quickly write back, I meant your wife, and I've done that so many times. The thing that was supposed to make texting easier actually made it so much more frustrating, because then I have to go back and resend texts explaining all the missed text words that I had sent. Except for recently, that doesn't happen anymore. Has anybody else's predictive texting problem been solved in the last 3 weeks? Do you know why? iOS 8. What does iOS 8 do? Anybody have iOS 8? Is anybody else as excited about iOS 8 as I am? What does iOS 8 do when you're predictive texting? Anybody know? It pops up with 3 options, right? And then you know what you do? You choose one of those 3. So now if I'm I want you to talk to your wide, it's going to say wide or wife, and I get to choose wife, and I don't make stupid mistakes. Anyway, so I'm texting Michelle because I'm going to tell her that I'm going to give her a lot of credit for today's chapel address. What I'm going to talk about today actually has been informed a lot by my conversations with Michelle. She did a chapel address last year called New Requires New. And I take copious notes on my life. I have this file on my iPad where I'm constantly plugging in the brilliant things that my students say in class or the people around me. I mean, I work at a college, and so there's brilliant people around me all the time. And so I have all these notes from Michelle's chapel address last year, New Requires New. And then she wrote a small group curriculum for us with the same name, New Requires New, that she and I have been working on the last 4 or 5 weeks to get ready. And so she has really been a great partner in my work here at Warner the last year plus. And so a lot of today, she has been influencing my thoughts around what to talk about today. So we're going to sort of try something different today. Today is going to be the first of a 2-parter, Tuesday and Thursday. And we know that generally not the same audience is here every chapel, on a Tuesday to Thursday. So we'll do some recap Thursday, but we're going to really, for you to get the most out of the best, receive what we want to do. We're going to try to do this 2-parter thing today and Thursday. And today I'm going to give some introductory remarks, and then Thursday we're going to sort of talk to each other a little more. But actually, in truth, this is a sort of 3-parter because it all leads to some small group, to a small group that Michelle wrote for the community on New Requires New. So we're going to start today about how to engage newness in our lives. We're going to keep talking about it Thursday. And ultimately, if this is something you want to work through in your life, we have a small group that we want you to be a part of. I want to work with a very small passage that's in our small group, New Requires New, that's really easy to understand. And it comes from the book of Mark. The book of Mark in the Bible is one of 4 stories about Jesus. There's 4 of them. Mark's the second one. And Mark is really easy to understand. The one I talked about earlier in the semester in chapel, Luke, goes through a real chronological order. It talks about Jesus' childhood, and then it tries to follow him in 3 years, and ultimately ends with death and resurrection. Mark doesn't take the time to sort of tell the story chronologically. He wants to put the conflict right up front. And I don't know if you've seen a movie where, in the opening scene, someone dies, and the rest of the movie is going to be dealing with this one event, right? That's sort of the book of Mark. From the jump, Mark sets up what the problem is. And the problem is that Jesus is on the scene, and he is going to upset the religious powers of his day by doing things that goes against their laws and their norms, but talking about love and modeling love the whole time. So that he sticks love up against their religious laws and norms and says these two don't work together. And then right away, he commits like the thing that they hate the most, which is blasphemy, and he forgives somebody, which puts himself on par with God. And then right away in the book of Mark, they want to kill the guy. And so he sets that up like from the jump, and then the rest of the book is dealing with this conflict. Imagine someone you respect comes on the scene and tells you that everything you're doing is wrong. That's the book of Mark. And then he opens this, has his opening shot, and uses this metaphor and sort of draws a line in the sand. And then by the end of this, by the end of chapter 2, by the beginning of chapter 2, they really want to kill him. And he says this metaphor: no one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth to an old garment. Otherwise, the patch pulls away from it, the new from the old, and a worse tear results. Then he says, no one puts new wine into an old wineskin, otherwise the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is lost, and the skins as well. But one puts new wine into fresh wineskins. So let me explain. We don't sort of have the same sort of culture around clothing or wine as they do. So with the garment and the cloth, so I can, like, if I get a tear in my shirt, if I want to, I can sort of stick a patch on this and keep washing it like normal and everything's good. Well, we have sort of a robust textile industry that makes this shirt pretty durable. In their day, if you were to put a new patch on an old piece of clothing, that patch will eventually sort of shrink up over time. And what it's going to do is it's going to tear an actual bigger hole in your shirt, and thus you ruin the shirt and lose the patch altogether. So you don't have anything by the end. Similarly, like we can put wine in nice bottles and age it for a period of time and put corks in it and take the cork off and drink it, put the cork back, and we have this great system of keeping wine. They actually used animal skin to put wine in. And if you are going to put new wine in an old animal skin, a couple things are going to happen. It's going to get gross because whatever the animal skin thing is going to like infect the wine, and that's going to not taste real good. But eventually that animal skin, the alcohol is going to break it down, and there's going to become holes in the animal skin, and you're going to lose the wine and the animal skin because it's just going to create holes, and then it doesn't hold the wine anymore. And these are his sort of metaphors for what's going on. Basically, your old system is like an old wineskin that if I put my new good stuff in, it's going to break. I think there's a lot of modern illustrations we could use from this. My iPhone 5 works with iOS 8. Awesome. My iPad, 3-4 years old, not so much. I can't even get iOS 8 onto my iPad. The old technology doesn't take the new operating system very well. There's lots of things in our life where the new doesn't take to the old very well. You change your major, your old classes don't work for your new major. You can't make out with your old girlfriend and have started a new relationship. Being in this sort of girlfriend transition process doesn't work. You either got the new girlfriend or you got the old one, but you don't make out with both of them at the same time, right? I mean, there's just some old things that are old and new things that are new. There's some things you just cut and run, right? Like eventually I'll have to cut the iPad and run. Some new things just require new, right? This was Jesus' big mission in the Gospels. There was rules and norms that Jesus didn't want to have get in the way of people coming to a new expression of faith in God. So he uses these metaphors. And there was an old way of religion that was defined by rules and steps that were defined for others about how they were supposed to get to God. There was an in system and an out system, and the most educated people and the ones with power decided upon who benefited from that system, who was in that system, and they were able to judge people based upon what they saw to determine whether they met their standards of belief and behavior, and it was all very public. Last time I was here, I talked about these two characters, a Pharisee and a tax collector. And the Pharisee was in the system and had everything going for him and said it out loud and told people he was in, and the tax collector very much out. And Jesus responds, it's the tax collector that God saw that was righteous. I hope none of this sounds familiar to those of you who are in relationships with people who follow Jesus. sometimes we can do the same thing. So Jesus comes on the scene and he makes a statement to power by intentionally getting himself into situations by breaking religious laws for a deeper message of love and peace. And in so doing, he incurs the natural consequences. And I hope that does sound familiar to those of you who are in relationships with people who follow Jesus. So he comes on the scene and he says, your old way will not be conducive to what we're going to do with love here. Sometimes new can be made good, but sometimes new just cannot exist with old. There are some aspects of our lives that just need a new paint job, and we're good. But there's some aspects of our lives where the old just needs to be replaced altogether by new. Life with Jesus requires a new, entirely different framework. A life engaged in a different set of beliefs about yourself and about your world, a new set of places to go, people to see, things to think, and stuff to do. A life with Jesus has a different set of values and a different way, above all, of putting love at the center of our lives. For me, there was a point where new required absolutely new. And there was a lot of old things in my life I had to get rid of. I had to get new from the inside. The way I thought had to work itself out with the way I talked, with the things I valued, my goals, my hopes. I had to be new because the old was primarily focused on myself and my pain. But new wanted my life focused on joy and others and peace. And it was beautiful and it was tough. And this is how I think for religious folks like me, we tend to get legalistic because I want my new to be everybody's new, and I want it to look like what it's looked like for me. And in my zeal to be new, sometimes it imposes on other people in some difficult ways that looks like a set of rules for everyone. While Jesus was freeing his people from the rules that define them, he was pushing towards a deeper, authentic truth about how to follow with our hearts. A new heart, a new life. I've learned that there are aspects of my life where I cannot be the same old person with the same old desires and intentions and be a new person in Jesus. That sometimes new needs a new start and a new world. Sometimes I really want to load my new operating system onto my old computer. And the two just aren't compatible anymore. One of the things I've learned is that a new operating system does new things, right? It enables new programs. Sometimes it does old things better, like my predictive texting. So I think there's some spiritual principles here, because while making new is not a one-time shot. Like, it is a constant reorganization of your life around new convictions that require new behaviors and new norms and a new way to look at the world, a new lens. Let me continue with sort of the metaphor of the operating system. I have a tech junkie in my life who the next new iPhone and the next new thing is like always a priority. And this is my first smartphone. I literally used a flip phone until like April of this year. And so I don't even know how to even engage this thing to the most of its capacity. I just found out that I can make it remind me to do things when I get places. Like, that's the coolest thing. I can tell Siri, like, remind me when I get to work to, appreciate Michelle. And then I think, appreciate Michelle. And it like comes up. It's like, not that I need to be reminded of. And so I have this friend who's such a tech junkie. Let's talk about my friend for a minute. Who's such a tech junkie that this thing is like an iPhone. What is this one? 5? Is it 5? So he's such a tech junkie that he would not get the iPhone 5 when it came out. Anybody know why? because he knew the iPhone 6 would be out real soon. He needed the newer new in his life. So he's still rolling with his iPhone 4 that can't actually answer phone calls. I was with him, my wife tried to call him, and he couldn't actually answer the phone because he's waiting on the iPhone 6 because the newer new is what he has to get his hands on. My faith is often like the ever-evolving world we live in. Our world is moving so fast. I love the Warner mission statement that we desire to engage students and to have you learn in such a way where you can actively engage in a constantly changing world. Like, we want you to be adept and always having the ability to engage the next set of questions, the next challenge, the next big thing that the world has to throw at us. We want to educate you in a way that you can begin to engage that no matter what the future looks like. This making new is not a one-time shot for me in my life. It's the constant reorganization of my life around new convictions that require new behaviors and new norms and a new way to look at the world. I want to offer to you that while my Christianity began as my old being incompatible with my new, that as my life in Christ has emerged, it happily responds like our ever-changing world. My new life in Jesus will always require the next steps of faithfulness. And I think it will for you, no matter how long you walk with Jesus. There are always new areas in my life that I need to give over control, that I need to think about what it is to have Jesus be in control of those areas. At one moment, my kids and my marriage and my church is comfortable and I'm rolling, but my job becomes difficult and I have to trust God with different things. Or my job settles in and my family's good, but my church begins to ask of me more areas of my life than I want to give it. Or my job and my church provide a great foundation, but my marriage and my parenting gets difficult and I find myself right back on my face before God. Or often all those things are going well, but just my own struggle and my own insides are messed up and I got to figure out how to trust God with that. For some of you, I watch it. Your roommate's good, your relationships are good, your family's good, but school gets haywire and you've got to trust God in a different way. Or your school is good and your family's good and your friendships are good, but your roommate goes haywire and now you have to trust God in some different ways there. And sometimes your roommate's good, your family's good, your school's good, but now your relationships are bad and you're trying to make out with two girls at once. And now I'm like, you gotta trust God in some different ways. And sometimes all those things are fine, but your own baggage comes up and you've got to trust God in some deeper places than you ever wanted to. This is an ever-evolving process of giving control and embracing new life. My faith is required of me in new and different ways all the time, and I rarely get a vacation from God's demands for me to engage new steps for my life. There's a sort of depth to the way God wants me to trust. Sometimes I'm asked to forgive when I thought I had already forgotten. Sometimes I'm asked to sacrifice money or passions. Sometimes I'm asked to walk into the unknown. Sometimes I'm being asked, am I willing to sacrifice the things that are dear to me, like Warner and family and church, or just the junk in my life? But there's no place in my life that seems to be off limits for the new steps that God wants me to take. And sometimes God finds new places that I didn't even know were there. Sometimes everything seems to be a step forward, especially when I'm not feeling it. And I think this is a sign of a healthy spirituality. To be grappling always with new ways of thinking, alternative perspectives, new convictions, new meanings, new mission. Comfortability, I think, is important. It has its place. But with a life committed to Jesus, comfortability is not a long-term condition. And often, so often for me, I want to do these things on my own, but it takes a community to guide. And this is the thrust of our new small group, this new that requires new. We want you to be in a process of identifying where the old patterns of your life And how does Jesus want you to engage those new patterns? But it takes one another, and it takes allowing one another in, which for a lot of the students I've worked with in my time at Warner, letting other people in to the things that are dearest to me is a really tough struggle. To be willing to say, hey, I need to ask for help in this, or to be willing to say, this is what I'm truly passionate about, or look at this piece of my life with me and give me your perspective. This activity we did at the top, what's most important to you in life, that was not sort of meant to be flippant. The ability to share what's most important in our lives is part of this process of engaging new. It takes one another to allow ourselves to know and be known. And it's important to the newness process to be engaged with others. So we asked you to identify 3 things and to remember and ask a good question about one of them. Because I think that's the way we want to sort of engage spiritual growth with one another. That's the way we want our small groups to run. That's the way we hope friendships roll around here, where we're truly engaging what's most important to one another. So Hakeem's going to come back up, and he wants to re-engage that part of our time together.
Am I good? Okay. So, would anybody like to share what it is that they enjoy about life, that is important to them? Would anybody be brave enough to share what they heard or what they're thinking right now at all? Come on now, don't make this awkward for me. No? Okay.
Oh, girl. All right. Megan said, when I was kind of going around hearing everyone's, I heard like a lot of people were like books or materialistic things, and then I heard some girl say, she said Jesus, and I thought that was kind of ironic that, or maybe not ironic, but that there's something that's at the center, and sometimes we overlook those things. And that in order for us to have something new, we first have to start with something that's constantly new and refreshing. But yeah, that was one thing that stuck with me.
Well, allow me to share one thing, since I'm actually going to share something different. So I'm like going off tangent, but whatever. One of the things that I really think is important in life is love. You know, like I'm no theologian, I'm no philosopher, no rocket scientist, but I do know a little bit about love, right? And for me, I like to think of love as a biblical thing, right? You look at this common theme throughout all of the Bible, and there's one thing that comes up about love, and it's God. Because I think that this world can't function without love. Am I correct in that? Because if there was no love, everybody would be ready to kill each other. And then there'd be like nothing surviving on this earth. But since nothing can survive without love, since this world can't function without love, but God is love, what does that mean? This world can't function without God. So it kind of wraps back to what you said. God is at the center of it all. That's something that's important to me. It may not be as important to you, but I mean, hey. So would anybody else like to share before we close this down? Larissa? Oh, okay. Well, Jess, come on back up here. And, yeah. Wait, how do you turn this off?
We're going to close with our announcements, but I want to just ask you to come back Thursday and to think about the sense of new for you. If your life needs a new sense of new, we want to walk with you through that. If your life needs a renewing new, we want to walk with you through that. We want to be able to create some smaller communities here to walk with folks around the things that God is asking them to do that are new for them. So come back Thursday. We'll have some more conversations around newness and what that can mean for all of us.